Shem, Boker Tov. We're up to today's Daf Yomi, dedicated Hatzalah for the Shvuyim, Ashmir for the Chayalim. Yeshua for Am Yisrael is Bava Basra Daf Kuf Gimel, Bava Basra Daf Kuf Gimel, and we're going to start on the bottom of Kuf Beis, Amar Beis. Let's just review the Mishnah because it's hard to follow it otherwise. Somebody says to his friend, I'm selling you this field I'm selling you for the earth. I'm selling you a field that's the size of base core. Let's say you have these crevices in it that are deeper than 10 tefachim, or you have these rocks that are higher than 10 tefachim, then we're not going to include it with it. You follow this, Etsy? But so if they're too deep or too high, then they're not included with the field because you're buying the field to be planting for the earth. Pachos mikan, but if it's less than that, what are you looking at, Jeff? I think it's you. Pachos mikan, but if it's less than that, nimdad denima. And if it's less than that, then we're going to include it in the field. Vim amarlo kebeis kor afar. But if he says like a base core afar, even if it's deeper than 10 tefachim, or the rocks are higher than asar tefachim, so if he says exactly, then it has to be exact. If he says like it, then you can include the even if it's deeper than 10 tefachim or higher than 10 tefachim. Now the Gemara compares this to what's called a stei achuza. A stei achuza, a field that it's inherited, is a very special law about it, that if you have this field that's a stei achuza and you donate it to the temple and then you want to redeem it, if it's designated as a stei achuza, then it's redeemed for 50 silver coins. And then for each year and during the Jubilee year that you don't redeem it, the reduction price is reduced by 1 silver coin. So now we're going to compare that to this field. Tanan Hasam, we learned in the Mishnah in Erechin. God willing, we'll get to that as a Daf Yomi Chavura. Hamakdish Sadeo B'Shasa Yom. So let's say you consecrate your field, and most commentaries say it means right after the Jubilee year. This is a stei achuza, inherited field, which has a special law that you can redeem for 50 silver coins. No single lebei zera chomer you can give for the amount of a field that you could plant a zera of chomer sa'orim, this amount of this field that you can plant this zera chomer sa'orim that's appropriate to plant the barley, chamishim shekel kasef. You give to him 50 silver coins, and you give to the temple to redeem it 50 silver coins. Because the field could be worth much more, and so it's a special gzeres hakosef. It's a law from the Torah that you redeem the field for only 50 silver coins. But let's say this field has Ayun Sham Nekaim Amukim. Yud Tefachim. Let's say it's deeper than 10 Tefachim. Oslam Gavoin Yud Tefachim. Or if it's higher, let's say you have these rocks in it or the crevices in there. So it's only the base Zera Chomer Sorim with that amount in there. Then Ein Nimdad anymore. Then these cracks and crevices are not measured within it. Pachos mikan, but if it's less than 10 tefachim, nimdad anima. So less than 10 tefachim, then it's going to be measured with it. So the Gemara now asks, what do we say about this law that if the cracks and crevices are not going to be, if they're not 10 tefachim, why do we say that? So the assumption is that if they're deeper than 10 tefachim, they're not measured with it, and then and so they don't get the redemption as though they're a stei achuza, meaning at the ratio of 50 silver coins. So why won't we say they'd still be consecrated as part of a stei achuza? They are the inherited land going back to the time of Joshua, so it shall be consecrated on its own. Gemara says, and if you want to say kivin delo have base core, if you want to say, well, maybe they don't meet the minimum size, they're not the size of a base core, so therefore they're not sanctified. But we know that that's not true because it says in the Brisa a field. Why does it say a field? Because it says a field the size to plant a zera, that you plant a chomer of barley is chamishim shekel kesef. Eli el shektish binyan zeh. I only know if you consecrated that amount. Minayel rabos lesech, v'chatzi lesech. These are smaller ratios. Or say a tarkev or chatzi tarkev. How do we know that all of those are also going to be proportionally 50 silver coins? How do we know that that's also the case? So Tamalomar Sadeh Mikol Makom. So the Torah adds the word Sadeh to teach us that anything that is an inherited field, we what's the word where you proportionate? Basically, proportionally, we redeem it to 50 silver coins based upon the size of Zerach Omer Sa'orim. So it doesn't matter that it's smaller; it's still going to be redeemed at that ratio. So the Gemara says, what? Right. So if that's the case, why if you're redeeming these cracks that are deeper than 10 tefachim, we don't redeem them at the size of the redemption rate of 50 selah for a base course? So Amar Avukva Bar Chama, what are we talking about here? But these are cracks that are deeper than 10 tefachim, and they're filled with water, so therefore they can't be planted in, so therefore they don't get to be redeemed as a steachuza. And they can, indeed, we can infer this to Katani Dumyo Desalayim, because it says these pits similar to rocks. So meaning to say that just like the rocks can't be planted at all, so therefore they're not considered a beis achuza, steachuza. So too, also these crevices, they're filled with water, so they can't be redeemed at that amount. Shema mina. So the Gemara says, if that's the case, well, if it can't be planted at all, even if it's less than 10 tefachim, it shouldn't be able to be redeemed because it can't be planted. So even if it's less than 10 tefachim deep, since it's filled with water, it shouldn't be included in the amount that's called an inherited field. The Gemara says, no, if it's less than 10 tefachim, nagani da'ara mikri or shadu dakri mikri, then it's just called the cracks in the land or the spines of the land. That's like a normal, a normal crack in the land, and so therefore it's going to be considered. You had a question, Itzi? So then the Gemara says, well, if that's the case, hachamai. Oh, okay. What about a field that hachamai? What about a field that you sell? Meaning to say, the Gemara says, what's the question over here in this case? These ditches that you in your field that you sell that are deeper than 10 tefachim, where we say that they're not measured with it, are we talking about only those crevices that are filled with water, which are like rocks, or even those crevices that are not filled with water? What are we talking about? By the case of the Mishnah and Erechin, we're only talking about those crevices that are filled with water. What about in the sale where we say it's not included? Are those only the ditches that are filled with water that we say are not included, or even the ones that are not filled with water? So that's the question as Rashbam understands it. So Amar Papa, no, even though these ditches, if you sell your field and there's a ditch deeper than 10 tefachim and you promised them 50 core of plantable ground, this ditch is not going to be included, even though it's not filled with water. My timer. Nobody's going to be paying for that, and it looks like 2 or 3 fields. You're not expecting that with it. That's the umdana. It's a valuation. We say a person doesn't want to give his money in one place, and it looks like 2 or 3 places, so he doesn't intend to include it. It looks like it's 2 fields, and so therefore he doesn't intend to include that in it. So the Gemara says, first of all, it's a big problem because anyway, it does look like it. Regardless, you're just not paying for that part. So the logic is a little bit strange to me, but okay, we'll leave that aside. It's stuff yummy. So Ravina says, but doesn't it say it's similar to rocks? So isn't it like the rocks where it's not capable of being planted? So too these ditches should not be capable of being planted. Why do we say it's not filled with water? It should be that it's filled with water. So the Gemara says no. No, when it says similar to rocks, it means even less in it. It's just like there's meaning to say. When the ditches are less than 10 tefachim, that we say that even though they're not worthy to be planted, they're measured with it, just like rocks. Even though they're not able to be planted, they're measured with it. So now the Gemara says, even though it says in the Mishnah that these ditches that are less than 10 tefachim from the ground are measured with it, nevertheless, there are circumstances where it's not measured with it. For example, if this area of these crevices are greater than 4 kavin. So Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Terashim Sha'amru, this law that we said in our Mishnah that these rocks that are less than 10 tefachim are measured with the field that you're sold, that's only where they're in an area that's base arba kavin. Though it's only if the field together is only 4 kavin, because in this amount we're going to say, of course you're not going to have a field without rocks, and therefore what he acquired. But if it's more than this, he's not going to accept it, because a person's not going to accept more rocks that take up more than 4 kavim. I mean, there's a certain amount of rocks I'll accept, up to 4 kavim. More than that, I won't accept it. And it says, Amar Rav Ukva Bar Chama v'Husha Muvlain b'Chameshes kavin. And this is only the case where these 4 kavin are included within the area that's 5 kavin. But because then it's considered like one rock. If it's these 4 kavim of these rocks need to be spread out in a large area, meaning more than 5 kavin. But if it'd be less than that, we'll assume it'd be like one large rock, and it's like its own entity, and it's not nullified by the field. These 4 kavin need to be spread out over the majority of their field, and then we don't look at it as one field. Meaning, say most understand that he's arguing with Rav Ukva Bar Chama, not just within 5 kavin. It needs to be spread out the majority of the fields. And by Rav Chia Bar Abba, Ruban b'miyuta umiyutam beruban ma'u. So what's this question here? It says, let's say the majority of these rocks are spread over a minority of the field, or a minority of the rocks are spread out over the majority of the field. What will be the law in that case? Meaning to say, since they're spread out over 4 kavin in the field, is it sufficient? Or do we say that since the majority of them, of those 4 kavin, are found in a small minority, it's not considered spread out? The Gemara says we're going to leave that question unresolved. Take you. So now the next question is by Rabbi Yirmiyah. So let's say these rocks are spread out like a share, like a circle, like a circle. Ma, what would be the law? Does that make it more difficult to plow, or kishura, or straight line? So that also makes it difficult to plow. Or it's itzadin, or like the antlers, the horns of the ox. Itzadin is also sometimes a Talmud meaning a stadium, or derech akal ton, or like a zigzag. What would be the law under all these circumstances? Teku. Okay. Tana, imayasela yachidi. So let's say we learned in the Brisa, let's say there would be a single rock that stands on the outside of the field, afil kolshu einim darima. Because since it's standing apart, then since it's on the outskirts of the field, we're not going to measure it with it. But but if it was next to the border, afil kolshu einim nimnadid ima. So if it's basically a single rock, or if it's next to the border, we're going to say that these rocks are not going to be included in the field, and you don't measure with it. By Rav Papa, mufsak avar beintayim. Let's say there's one rock in the middle of the field, but it's not next to the border. But there's earth that's less than 3 tefachim between the earth and the border. What will be the law there? Do we say that it's considered next to the border and not measured with it, or do we say it's not the case? So we say teku. By Rav Ashi, offer milamata v'tsunmo milamalo. Let's say there's earth under the rock, and the stone is on top of the earth, or offer milamalo v'tsunmo milamata, or there's earth above and rock below. What will be the case? Teku. In all these cases, we're trying to figure out exactly whether or not the rock was intended to be included. You had a question? The halacha of a sukkah, 3 tefachim, she is correct that we're getting close to sukkah. So we say if the walls come within 3 tefachim of the ground, it's called lavud. Or if the schach is within 3 tefachim of each other, it's called like it's connected. So therefore, that we're going to view it as though it's attached to the ground. So maybe that should be connected to this halacha. It's a good point. Maybe we connect it. But here we did they say 3 tefachim here? All right, where does it say it? But it's where does it say it? Oh, it's not, it's the commentary. So Rashbam. Okay. Okay. So, oh, right. So the Papa Mufsak offer Beintayim, and then the Rashbam says that it's within 3 tfachim of the side. That So that's only Rashbam, but others say differently than that. We just do the next Mishnah. Base core offer ani mocharlach. I'm selling you a field the size of a base core offer, but you say mida b'chefel, exactly by the rope. Then piches kol shehu. Then if you're a little bit less, you knock it. You have to deduct. Then under those circumstances, the seller has to give him back some money because he didn't get everything he paid for. But why don't we say it's canceled the sale? I think we assume that when there's a little bit of a discrepancy, it doesn't cancel the sale, but you have to return some of the money. Hoser kol shehu. Let's say he gave him too much field. Yachzer, the person has to return it. Vim Amar, he has to return the part that he got extra. Vim Amar, but let's say he says, hey, chaser and yasser. He says, I'm selling to you more or less. I feel piches rova was even if he gets less 1/4 kav for each seah. Oh, Hotzir Rova or one Rova extra for Isaiah Higiu. The field is going, the sale is valid. You have it, if you say more or less, then you have this discrepancy, 1/4 kab per sale, which is 7.5 kabin for 30 Isaiah. Yoser Mikan Yaseh Cheshbon. But more than that, he has to do a calculation and he has to return everything. We had this case before. Mao machzer lo mos. That what does the purchaser have to return? He has to return the money. V'im ratza machzer lo karka. But if the seller wants, he could say, you have to specifically return to me the real estate, and the Gemara is going to discuss that. Lama amru machzer lo mos. Why does it say return the money? To say that the seller wants, he can even get the money back. The Gemara is going to discuss that case. Shem shir b'sadeh base tisha kabin. Let's say he added onto the field extra 9 kabin or begina or in a garden or base chatzikav, kedivri Rabbi Akiva base rova, or according to Rabbi Akiva that if he added on 1/4 of a kav, how do we know that these are amounts capable of working? Machzer was a karka. He has to return the money and not the real estate and not the money. Well, it's a robo vadu machzer. Let's call him motor. Okay, we did this pretty quickly. He doesn't only return the 1/4 kav, but also all the extra. We did this very quickly. God willing, we'll go a little slow. We'll do this Mishnah again tomorrow. We'll do this Mishnah again tonight at 5:50 and again tomorrow. A big shkoyach to everybody. Have a good fast.